Good morning, class 9. Back to our new lessons once again. Today we shall start a new chapter in Reader, Packing. As the name of the chapter suggests, that the chapter is about packing things. Now, children, I am sure whenever you have been to another city or you went to a hill station in the past, you must have done extensive packing. We pack our things, we pack our luggage, we make a list what all things have to be packed, and we do our packing properly in a planned way. But there are some people in the world who don't know how to pack things, who create a mess, who create a confusion all around, and they really don't know how to pack and when to pack. So this is a very humorous chapter and you will find it very entertaining. It is all about packing. Let us start and enjoy what the chapter tells us. Packing. Before you read, do you like going on trips? What kind of trips do you enjoy most? How do you feel about having to pack for a trip? Have you ever discovered on a trip that you have forgotten to pack a few things you very much need, or that you can't find them easily? Does this make you angry, or does it make you laugh at yourself? Now read this description of how the author and his friends pack. So we are going to read about 3 characters in this story. One is the author himself and 2 other characters are his 2 friends, and all of them think that they know how to pack things very well, but actually the case is very different. I will not tell you anything more because I want you to read the chapter and enjoy it yourself. Now I am reading, pay attention. I said I would pack. I is the writer. I rather pride myself on my packing. That means the writer says that I am very proud of myself because I think that I can do packing very well. I am very proud of my packing. I rather pride myself on my packing. Packing is one of those many things that I feel I know more than any other person living. So look at the confidence, children. Look at the confidence of the writer. He says that I think that I know packing more than any other person who is living on this earth. It surprises me myself sometimes how many such things there are. Oh my goodness, look at the overconfidence. He says that he is himself surprised to see that there are so many other things which he is so good at, and packing is one of them. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris. George and Harris are the friends of the writer. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. So when George and Harris were about to assist the writer in packing, he wanted to tell them that they must leave the entire task of packing to the writer. Why? Because the writer was of the opinion that he is the best packer in the world. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. They fell into the suggestion with readiness. That means they easily agreed, they quickly agreed upon this suggestion. Which suggestion? That the whole task of packing should be entirely left to the writer. They fell into the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny about it. That means it had something strange. Their easily agreeing to this suggestion was a little strange, weird. George spread himself over the easy chair and Harris cocked his legs on the table. So as soon as George and Harris came to know that the writer wanted to do all the packing himself, now they were cool, they were relaxed, and George spread himself over the easy chair to relax and Harris also relaxed, sitting on the chair and putting his legs on the table. This was hardly what I intended. Now, actually, the writer did not expect this reaction from George and Harris. The writer was thinking that George and Harris might tell him that no, we will help you in packing, let us do the packing. And what will the writer do? He will just do the inspection work. He will inspect that whether George and Harris were packing things properly or not. This was hardly what I intended. What I had meant, of course, was that I should boss the job, and that Harris and George should potter about under my directions. So, this is what I said just now. The writer never expected that George and Harris would readily agree to his suggestion and they would start relaxing themselves. Instead, he was expecting that these two people, George and Harris, they would do the packing and the writer would be the boss. That means, like a boss does the inspection work, in the same way the writer would be the boss of that packing job, and he would just give them instructions which they would follow under his directions. I pushing them aside every now and then with, "Oh, you, let me do it. There you are, simple enough," really teaching them, as you might say. So the writer thought that when George and Harris would say that no, we will do all the packing, then what is the writer going to do? He would tell them, "Oh, you are not doing it properly, let me do it. I'll show you how to do. There you are, it's simple enough." He will demonstrate, he will tell them, he will teach them how to pack things, and the things would proceed like this. But actually, this did not happen. Their taking it in the way they did irritated me. Their taking it in the way they did, that means they were sitting comfortably, relaxing, putting the legs on the table, sitting comfortably on the chair. This attitude of George and Harris irritated the writer. There is nothing does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I am working. So, seeing their relaxed attitude, the writer says that nothing irritates me more than the sight when I see that people sit and just while away their time, relaxing and doing nothing, while I am doing all the work. I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. Now the writer is explaining one of his past experiences. I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. He would loll on the sofa, that means he would sit, relax on the sofa, and watch me doing things by the hour together. He said it did him real good to look at me messing about. So this man used to sit on the sofa and just he would relax and kept on watching the writer doing all the work, messing up the work altogether. Now, I am not like that. The writer is saying, I am not like that man, that I will just sit on the sofa and see George and Harris messing up everything. Now, I am not like that. I can't sit still and see another man slaving and working. I want to get up and superintend. I want to get up and superintend means I want to do inspection work. I want to inspect and see whether George and Harris are doing the work properly. Of which work? Packing things. Are they doing packing properly or not? I want to get up and superintend and walk round with my hands in my pockets and tell him what to do. It is my energetic nature. I can't help it. So this man, the writer, is praising himself, and he says that I am not that lazy fellow who will just sit on the sofa and see other people working. I will do the inspection work, I will superintend the work, and with my hands in my pocket, and I will tell them what to do. It is my energetic nature. However, I did not say anything but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought it was going to be, but I got the bag finished at last and sat on it and strapped it. So finally, the packing of the bag was done by the writer, and he strapped. That means he pulled the chain of the bag, closed the bag, and the packing was done. Aren't you going to put the boots in? Said Harris. Now, once the packing is over, now actually the confusion begins. Harris is telling the writer that, are you not going to put the boots inside the bag? And I looked round and found that I had forgotten them. That's just like Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag shut and strapped. Of course. Now what is the writer doing? He is putting all the blame on Harris. And he is saying that till the bag was not strapped, till the bag was open, Harris did not speak a word and tell me that I have not packed the boots. And as soon as I closed the zip of the bag, now he is reminding me that the boots are left. And George laughed, one of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. He becomes angry. The writer becomes angry. He gets irritated when George laughs at the writer. I just opened the bag and packed the boots in. And then, just as I was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never do know whether I have packed my toothbrush. Now another confusion comes in the mind of the writer, and he is questioning himself, have I packed the toothbrush? And he realizes that whenever I do the packing work, I always get confused. I always forget whether I have packed my toothbrush or not. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling. That means it keeps on coming in his mind. When he is traveling, the thought of the toothbrush always comes in his mind, and he keeps on thinking whether he has kept the toothbrush in the bag or he has forgotten it. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration. That means this thought that he hasn't packed his toothbrush. He keeps dreaming about the toothbrush, and a thought comes suddenly in his mind that he has forgotten, he has not kept his toothbrush, and he starts sweating. And wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it. Then he gets up suddenly from his sleep and starts searching the toothbrush. And in the morning, I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it. And it is always the last thing I turn out of the bag, and then I repack and forget, and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station wrapped up in my pocket handkerchief. So this is always a matter of confusion in the mind of the writer. He is never sure whether he has packed his toothbrush or he has left it, or even before using it sometimes he packs it. So it is always creating a confusion in his mind. And finally, how does he pack his toothbrush? While going to the railway station, he wraps his toothbrush in a pocket handkerchief. So this is the way finally he keeps his toothbrush in his pocket. Of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out now, and of course, I could not find it. Every mortal thing means every ordinary thing. In order to make sure whether he had kept his toothbrush or not, he had to unpack everything. He had to take out every ordinary thing he had kept in his bag. But he could not find it. I rummaged the things up. Rummaged means searched in a hurried and careless manner. I rummaged the things up into much of the same state that they must have been before the world was created. That means when he unpacked everything, when he took out everything from his bag to search the toothbrush, the way he kept things outside the bag were in a completely messy manner. Everything in a bad order, not in an orderly form, as if it was the way when the world was created and when chaos reigned. The way he kept all his things outside the bag gave a picture that when the world was created, then how chaotic everything in the world was. Same way the writer was taking out things from his bag. Of course, I found George's and Harris's 18 times over. That means he found the toothbrush of George and Harris 18 times. But I couldn't find my own. Look at the mess he is creating. I put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. That means he is trying to investigate each and everything. He is trying to shake everything and see whether he has kept his toothbrush in some other thing or not. Then I found it inside a boot. I repacked once more. Finally, he found his toothbrush in a boot and he put everything in the bag once again and did the packing. When I had finished, George asked me if the soap was in. Now see, all are of the same quality. Neither the writer knows packing nor George and Harris know how to pack, because all are creating a confusion, all are equally confused and messy. They don't know how to keep things in what order packing should be done. George asked if the soap was in. I said I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it wasn't. And I slammed the bag shut and strapped it, and found that I had packed my spectacles in it and had to reopen it. Now look at the confusion. The confusion is not over. He did not bother to search whether the soap was in or not, because he was fed up of searching his toothbrush now, and he shut the bag, he closed the bag. But all of a sudden he realized that he had packed his spectacles inside the bag and he had to reopen it. I got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m. and then there remained the hampers to do. What are hampers? Large baskets for carrying food. So now finally at 10:05 p.m. the writer finished the packing of the bag, but he realized that there are hampers left to be packed. Harris said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time, and thought that he and George had better do the rest, and I agreed and sat down and they had a go. Now Harris said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours. He is reminding that less than 12 hours are left and we have to start our journey, and thought he and George had better do the rest, and I agreed and sat down. Now the writer sat down and he left the rest of the packing. The packing of the hampers were left to George and Harris. They began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. Now, the writer is trying to make fun of George and Harris, and he is saying that when they started packing, they tried to show the writer how to do the packing. That means they tried to prove that they can pack better. I made no comment. I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world, and I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. So many things had to be packed in the hamper, and the writer was just waiting for this packing to begin so that he could see the excitement. It did. They started with breaking a cup. Who started? George and Harris. They started the packing work with breaking a cup. So look at the excitement. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it. And they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. Now keep on watching how Harris and George are going to pack the hampers. And you will realize that they are equally worse. Neither the writer knew how to pack, nor these two fellows know how to pack. So how did Harris start with the packing? He packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it. Tomatoes are delicate, isn't it? If you will put any heavy thing on the tomato, it will become squashed. You will spoil the tomato. So the tomatoes got squashed, and they had to pick up the tomato with a teaspoon. And then it was George's turn, and he trod on the butter. Trod means he stepped on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that. It made them nervous and excited. What made them nervous? The sight that the writer is sitting on the table and he is watching them closely made them nervous and excited. And they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. So they did not know which thing should be put first, which thing should be packed afterwards. And they kept the things behind them. They could not find the things. They started searching those things which were actually kept behind them. So this was the way they were creating so much confusion while packing. They upset salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men do more than 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. After George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. That means the butter was put on the slipper by mistake, and he tried to take that butter off the slipper and he tried to put it in the kettle, but he was unable to do so. George was unable to do so. They did scrape it out at last and put it down on the chair, and Harris sat on it and it stuck on him. Now George was ultimately able to scrape some of the butter and he put it on the chair. He put the butter on the chair and Harris sat on that butter and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. So finally the butter was not found by them because Harris had sat on that butter. I'll take my oath I put it on that chair, said George, staring at the empty seat. George is taking an oath and saying that I had put the butter on the chair. I promise. But the chair was empty. There was no butter. Why? Because the butter had stuck to Harris. Then they started round the room and again looking for it. Now still they are searching where the butter has gone. And then they met again in the center and stared at one another. Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of, said George. Now they are finding it very extraordinary that I had kept the butter on the chair. Where has the butter disappeared? Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of, said George. So mysterious, said Harris. Harris also does not know that the butter which they are searching is actually stuck to his bottom. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. Finally, the butter has been discovered. Why, here it is all the time, he exclaimed indignantly. Indignantly means angrily. He is angry and saying that look, it is here. It is behind you. It is at your back. Where? Cried Harris, spinning round. Now suppose the butter is at your bottom. Will you be able to see the butter? You will not be able to see, and you will just move round and round. Similarly, Harris was just spinning round and round. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, flying after him. Now Harris is moving round and George is following him. And they got it off and packed it in the teapot. Now still see their dedication in packing the butter. They packed the butter in the teapot. Montmorency is their dog, who is no less. Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in the way and be sworn at. Be sworn at means be scolded, get scolding. If he can squirm in anywhere, he particularly is not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day has not been wasted. That means the writer says that Montmorency is also enough to create confusion in their house, and he always try to be there where he is not wanted at all. And when he makes people angry, when he makes people irritated, the people get so angry that they start throwing things at Montmorency, then he feels that he has done his job successfully and his day has not been wasted. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object. That means he tries to be everywhere where he is not wanted at all, and people stumble over him, they fall over him and curse him steadily for an hour. They keep on blaming the dog, they curse him, and this is actually it seems that it is actually the aim of Montmorency, that people should shout at him, people should curse him, they should fall on him, and there would be more confusion in the house. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object. And when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. Conceit means his pride in himself. He becomes very proud of himself when he sees that people are shouting at him, they are cursing him, they are blaming him that because of Montmorency their problem has increased, they throw things at him, then he feels very proud of himself. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed. Who came and sat? Montmorency. While the packing was going on, already we have seen that the packing was done in a state of confusion. There was so much of chaos everywhere, and to add to the chaos, Montmorency came in the scene, and he sat on things just when they were wanted to be packed. And he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris or George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted. Oh my goodness. That means the writer is saying that he believed that he should sit in such a place that when George or Harris, they would put their hand inside the bag to take out something or to keep something, what they will get? The cold nose, the wet, cold nose of Montmorency. Instead of getting that thing which they are actually searching for, they will get hold of the cold, damp nose of Montmorency. He put his leg into the jam and he worried the teaspoons. That means he started playing with the teaspoons. And he pretended that lemons were rats and got into the hamper and killed 3 of them before Harris could land him with the frying pan. So he used to keep playing with the lemons, thinking that he had caught hold of the rats, and he did that till that time when Harris was after him with a frying pan in his hand to beat him. Harris said, I encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. Harris is putting the blame on the writer and saying that the writer encouraged Montmorency to do all this mischief. But the writer says, I didn't encourage him. A dog like that doesn't want any encouragement. It's the natural origin sin that is born in him that makes him do things like that. The writer says that such naughty dogs like Montmorency, they don't need any encouragement. They are God gifted. They have this trait in them that they can create a mess anywhere, they can add to the confusion anywhere, and they can do things like Montmorency was doing. The packing was done at 12:50 and Harris sat on the big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. Now you are intelligent enough to imagine that if you will sit on the hamper which has plates, cups, etc., which has sauce, butter and so many other things, then are you expecting that nothing will happen to things inside? Nothing will break? See how these people are thinking. He hoped nothing would be found broken. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken. Now he is not bothered. He says, if anything is broken, let it be. It is broken. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken. Which reflection seemed to comfort him. Which reflection means this thought seemed to comfort him that now let it be. If something breaks, let it break. He also said he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night and we went upstairs. We tossed for beds and Harris had to sleep with me. He said, do you prefer the inside or the outside, J? I said I generally prefer to sleep inside a bed. Harris said it was odd. George said, what time shall I wake you fellows? Harris said 7. I said no, 6, because I wanted to write some letters. Harris and I had a bit of a row over it. Bit of a row means they had a little difference of opinion and they had a slight fight over it, whether they would get up at 7 or whether they should be woken up at 6. George made no answer and I've missed one line. Harris and I had a bit of a row over it, but at last split the difference. That means they agreed that they will get up